country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life. To be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it.
Hello, gatekeepers. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Here we are. It's been a minute. First of all, thank you for putting up with last weekend, which was absolutely insane. On Saturday, there was this event where I work, and from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, they were out doing donuts in the parking lot and burning tires. And I don't know how you win a contest like that. Maybe it's the amount of smoke, the amount of tire you burn. I have no clue. All I know, I was stuck in this room doing funeral arrangements all day, sticking flowers and things. Just, we were very busy. And I was breathing this stuff. And apparently I had this just really bad reaction to it. I can't imagine having a good reaction to it, but I don't know if that was mixed with something else or whatever. But my throat was on fire for a couple of days. Thank God for colloidal silver and sovereign silver. Let me just state it that way because they're not all rated the same. And thank you for understanding. I had to cancel the show. Poor Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. Hi, Lynn, for being in here. See you in the chat. I had to cancel her last minute. I was like, man, I can't even talk. I can't talk, right? That's definitely an emergency, right? So there's that. Then we tried to do a movie. We all watched JFK successfully on Rumble. Thank you for all who were there. I took that opportunity to share Oliver Stone's fantastic 1991 JFK movie, which really started an awful lot of the interest back into JFK, and it actually had some concrete effect on all of us. And the JFK pandemonium, conundrum, true crime of the century situation, because it sparked getting some of these documents released. And of course, many of them redacted and all this other stuff, how it all plays out. But it sparked a couple of more congressional meetings, and Oliver Stone, I know, went at least 2, maybe 3 times to speak on getting this information released to the public. However, like I said in the very first episode of Tapestry, the documents aren't going to tell you, here's the smoking gun, this is who did it, this is who did the order, this is who signed the paper, this is who got the ball rolling, because that would be an investigation, and that would be evidence in that case. And there was no investigation. The Warren Commission and that investigation, that was all just, forget about it. 26 volumes of the biggest gobbledygook you've ever heard in your life. And I'm sorry, I'm saying it. There's no sense of getting on here and lying about it. If you've read it, and I've read huge portions of it, not the whole thing. I'm not going to lie to you and say I read it cover to cover, back to back, because I didn't. And I'm not going to lie to you about that. But I read enough of it, and I know who was in charge of it, and I know who was involved in it, and I know pretty much how at least 6 of them got there. Well, most of them got on that panel. So I feel strong in saying that it's the biggest bunch of chicanery and bunk you've ever seen. And all of it was just based on trying to get one narrative out there, the lone gunman. And we all know that that was supposedly Lee Harvey Oswald, at least as we understand it now. So it was really good to be able to watch JFK. If you were there on Rumble, I appreciate you guys so much. I appreciate everybody on YouTube and everything else. As you know, we have been demonetized over there. So when you get demonetized, I'm guessing You also, they're not getting shared out, so there's problem with notifications. I'm not unsubscribing anybody. I'm not giving out notifications. It just seems to be something that's been happening. So there's that. It's not me. I love each and every one of you, and I appreciate each and every one of you. And I know not everybody wants to talk about this. I know a lot of people want to come on, even though it says paranormal, we go through this all the time, ad nauseum. History, true crime, conspiracy, everything else. Look, man, I've been looking into this for a long time. And if you don't think this is true crime, if you don't think there was something supernatural behind this, if you don't think there was something conspiratorial behind this, if you don't think that this is worth your time looking at evidence and the biggest multi-level conspiracy coup, you name it, it has so many names, it's so big and so massive. And if you don't think that it could help sharpen your mind to take another look at these things, to roll around these ideas, to look at, all these different wonderful researchers and witnesses and facts and match it up from when it happened in 1963 to what's new, what's come out, what has been uncovered, what's been validated, what's been thrown out, what has been, in our world, we like to say the word debunked. Excuse me. What's been debunked, right? Hold on one second. Excuse me. Still suffering. It brought on all kinds of other stuff. So anyway, we're going to hang in there. So anyway, I think it's really good to delve into this, and it's not your cup of tea, man. That's cool. I understand. We will be talking about ghosts and things. And at the end of this, excuse me, we will be looking at, see if there's any paranormal connections too, because man, there can't be this many people involved and no ghost at the end. So here we go. Yes, throw all your theories up there, but I'm going to tell you what, I am not easily swayed. And I'll tell you why. I take in all of it. But if I know that there's no corroborating evidence, if I know that, somebody in prison has had 10 years behind bars to come up with a story that might just fit, and we're selling a book and we're doing other things, and there's nothing that goes along with that that's going to convince me that it's solid evidence or it's no facts, I'm going to put it over here. You see what I'm saying? And I think we all have to do that, because a lot of the stuff has been really debunked. I hate using the word, but I'm going to have a coughing fit, so I am going to start sharing a video, if I can find it. I want this one. Excuse me, 1 second, guys. Hang in there.
And now for the next 30 minutes, As the World Turns.
For viewers of the CBS soap opera As the World Turns, first word came at about 1:40 p.m. Eastern Time. It happened too quickly for cameras to be in place.
And I gave it a great deal of thought, Grandpa.
It was back to the soap opera, but not for long. Soon after, Walter Cronkite was back, reporting from the CBS newsroom, complete with rotary telephones and wire machines.
This picture has just been transmitted by wire. It is a picture taken just a moment or two before the incident. If you can zoom in with that camera, we can get a closer look at this picture.
And almost exactly 1 hour after his initial bulletin, this now famous announcement.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
Vice President Johnson was at the hospital. Then now we do not know We proceeded. Presumably, he will be taking years to shortly become the 36th President of the United States.
Everything you are. Everything.
Introducing our cutting-edge Smart Zoom reading glasses, co-developed by NASA engineers.
He has not confessed. He has made no statement. Charges of murder have been accepted against him.
Any particular thing that he said that caused you to file the charges regarding the president's death against him?
Physical evidence is the main thing that we are relying upon.
What kind of evidence?
Let Mr. Wade make the statement.
This is Henry Wade, the district attorney of Dallas.
There's still some more ends that we're working on. This will be presented immediately to the grand jury as soon as some of the evidence is examined. It will be examined today at night and tomorrow. He has been filed in Judge David Johnson's Justice Peace Precinct 2 of Dallas. Been held without bond on this case and the other case too. It'll probably be the middle of next week before it goes to the grand jury because of some more evidence that has to be examined by the laboratory.
Mr. Wade, could you elaborate on the physical evidence?
Well, a gun and some other things that were gathered. Gun is one of them.
He's engaged a lawyer.
We don't know if people have been. Mr. Wade, you say the gun.
Is there any
Specifically.
Can we get a room where you get a picture of him? Can we get a press conference where he can stand against the wall? That's all.
I don't know where he is.
This is what it was like.
Mr. Wade. Mr. Wade.
Yes, sir.
Do you expect a confession from this man?
No,
Would you say it's a strong case?
I think it's sufficient.
What is the evidence of Lake
So the assassination of President Kennedy. He has at no time given any sign, apparently, of cracking under the pressure of constant interrogation. As I mentioned before, 4 homicide detectives have been questioning him now for some 10 solid hours. He has been formally charged before a Precinct 2 Justice of the Peace for Dallas County, David Johnston. Johnston says that he will be brought probably before a grand jury sometime in the middle of next week and will be indicted for the murder of the president.
That was fun. Okay. So stick with me. We're going to get through this. Are you behaving, Scott? I'm sorry, guys. I'm not on my top notch and on my best night. It's going to be quirky. There's just no two ways about it. So here's the thing. Last 3 episodes, we concentrated the first episode on who I think that, along with Jim Mars and multiple other people, that if you focused on just trying to get evidence, that you could actually probably high probability that you could get a conviction on the evidence and the facts and at least get them as accessory to, I would say, just like him, and I'm not alone, LBJ and Herbert Hoover, because of what we explained in the first episode. And again, that's not just me, and that's just my opinion based on the facts that we've been able to dig up. Who has the power? Who had the ability and the motive? Who benefited? So when people come at me and say, okay, it was the mob. Okay. Yes. But did the mob have the ability to change the parade route at the last moment to Elm Street? Did the mob have the ability to mess around with the body deliveries, with the handling of the limo being cleaned up so fast and taken apart, the windshield disassembled? Could the mob have gone through and covered up all of this? Could the mob have called in and said, I don't want any Secret Service people on the limo. Don't put the bubble top on. Could the mob have told the Dallas Police Department to stand down, to stop the National Guard from coming in and being on top of the buildings? So you have to think about it this way. Who had the power to do all of it? Oversee all of it and take care of large, big parts of this monster. And I think that's a good thing to call it. It is a conspiracy monster. So, yes, all of the theories, you know, when we think about it, we watch a movie or we watch a show or we read a book or we have a deathbed confession from someone who says, look, I was definitely there and this was me and I was one of the bums, or, you know, or the hobos on the train, or I was this. And then you have documents that come out and say 3 other people were arrested. None of those names were on that arrest, that those documents. And there's other stuff that backs that up. Well, then you have to say, did someone have the power to change those documents and make it appear? So this thing has so many layers, and you can't just say this person did it, or the Secret Service driver Greer, who was the oldest Secret Service agent there. He was driving the vehicle, the presidential vehicle. He turned around and shot the president, and nobody saw it. There were people standing 6 feet from him. Beverly never said that she saw that. You know, Clint Hill never, you know, again, there's so many people right there. We forget that there were people within 10, 15 feet. There were people who got blood and body matter on them. They were that close. So, and they didn't see it. Nobody ever said that. Now, there are things that people said that got changed in official documents. That makes me wonder. Well, they said this. Other people know they said this. But in the Warren report, it was changed. Why would it be changed? Who would change it? What would be the motive to change it? And did it get changed to underline a certain narrative? That makes me, that gets my attention. If people were saying that they were witness to something and then right away they committed suicide by shooting themselves in, I don't know, in the back with 5 times of the bolt action rifle, that makes me pay more attention to what they said, because not everybody involved here got whacked or greased or whatever you want to say. And I don't say that lightly, even though I've been looking at this for quite a few decades. I'm not jaded to the fact that these were human beings that saw something and spoke up. And that's why I called tonight In the Eye of the Beholder. Because just like you guys, this is in the eye of the beholder. What did they see? What did they see that nobody wanted them to say they saw? That makes me focus in on them. And after we looked at the first episode, which was, again, focused around LBJ, we're following, well, not just LBJ, but Bobby Baker, the whole LBJ clan, the party at the Murchisons the night before the assassination, who was at the party. We talked about Nixon being there. He was there for the Pepsi meeting. I believe this was the time that Joan Crawford was the CEO of that company, if anybody can remember back to that, when Joan Crawford was in that movie, what was it, Mommy Dearest or whatever, where she said, "Hello, fellas, I'm in charge now," or whatever, and they had to listen. I don't know if she was at the party. I know she was at the Pepsi meeting. So don't misunderstand me. But Nixon was there, Hoover was there, of course LBJ was there, Clint Murchison was there. Who else off the top of my head? Connolly, Governor Connolly, the governor of Texas. Here's somebody that has some power. Here's somebody that has some power to change some of the things I mentioned in the beginning. Could the governor change the route at the last minute for a presidential motorcade? Keep in mind, guys, there are squads that go ahead of wherever the president's going to be to meet with people, to set things up, to check buildings, owners of buildings. Is there any people that are there that have sent letters or saying things about Kennedy that might be a problem? It's supposed to be that minute of a sweep to make sure the security is tight for the presidential motorcade. We take it lightly when we say that. We don't realize how stringent these things were handled. Not in Dallas, not November 22nd. It was very different. And I yield very much toward the hard work, decade-long work of Vince Palomera. And he is known in this genre of JFK researchers as the specialist on the Secret Service. And he's got a wonderful YouTube channel. He's got multiple things posted up there. He's written 7 books. I think one of them is just being released now. The last one adds to Survivor Guilt, I believe, that he wrote on the Secret Service. But anyway, you want to talk in-depth Secret Service, he'll tell you Kennedy never told him to take off the bubble top. What these people do, these groups that do these kind of coups, they have a pattern. And we've talked about the patterns. We've talked about threads. We've talked about playbooks. This is what they do. We talked about the day that the day of when Oswald's running over the place. They found 3 wallets. How many wallets do you carry? Now they just drop passports. Do you see the parallels? So that's why, again, we stated in the first episode, second episode, and the third, that the reason this is important is because it's still going on. And if you're just going to look at one thing and say, okay, this guy, let's name somebody, James Files, says that he's the one that's behind the fence, the grassy knoll. You listen to his story. He's got a book, I'm sure, I think at least one. Several interviews. He says some very profound things. Those are all good interviews. And in fact, it was funny because I was listening to one of them not too long ago. I kept hearing this familiar voice. I'm like, who is this? I'm not seeing any names I recognize on the interviewer, the producer, the director, or whoever's, narrating. I said, who is this? And at the very end, it said interviewers were, and it was 2 guys. I had never heard of the first one. And the second one was Jim Mars. He knew what to ask Files. Do I believe him? Do I not? That's not the thing. Is it possible what he's saying is true? Does it fit? You got to look at it that way. Did he have time to fabricate it? Well, he was in prison a long time. I could come up with a good story with a lot of time on my hands. Again, who knows? 1 second, guys. Sorry. So your guess is as good as mine unless you start picking at the facts. And that's what you have to do. We did say, number one thing, though, threads. All the threads come together to make a picture. We leave the threads in there till we see where they lead and what the picture looks like, right? That's what we're doing. Excuse me. So tonight I want to focus a little bit more on the eye of the beholder and the witnesses. And I want you to ask yourself a question. Keep all the theories in your mind, and I'm going to go back over when I play this film. And I'm going to go through the chat because, like I said, from here I can't, it's kind of a little blurry, so I have to kind of move in a little bit to catch it all. And I want to go back and get the theories. We're going to watch a little piece of film here, and I want to go back and talk about some of those because, again, I want you to broaden your vision on this. We're here. We're going to take our coats off. We're going to take them to the coat check, whatever coats that we're comfortable in. You know, I'm comfortable saying it was the CIA. I'm comfortable saying it was the Secret Service. I'm a Cuba believer. I think Castro did it. I think it was the mob, and I have reasons for believing this. I have, you know, this guy had a good movie. This guy had a good story. This guy had a great book. And I've been on this one for 20 years, and I'm not moving. You know, I don't care what you show me. That's fine. You have to do you. My point is I'm going to try to bring out what I've found, why I am leaning a certain way, and introduce you to other people that over the years have really hung in there, not just with their theories, but with their character, with their willingness to move a little bit here and there to say, okay, that's a possibility. Let's look at that. You know, there's so many people in this. I mean, 60 years, guys, of people that have dedicated in 1963 to 65, 66. The number one person, type of person, excuse me, that was looking into this and dedicating so much of themselves to uncover the truth here out of just pure patriotism and wanting to right a wrong, and knew they were being lied to when this report came out, knew they were being lied to about what they were told on the news, not unlike us 60 years ago, not unlike us now. It was housewives and journalists and people. There was one lady, her name escapes me right now. I promise before this series is over, I'll dig it up because she needs to be remembered. Took her kids. She was a single mom. Took her kids and the dog, everything else, and packed up to move into Texas, to Dallas, just so she could interview witnesses and dig into newspaper clippings and go to these places to uncover the truth. And we're still doing things like that 60 years later. So forgive me if I don't just jump on something and go, oh, you know what? That's it. He's the one that did it. He's the one that ordered it. And this is the one who, all blame goes here. Because I started out in a group very much like the Jim Mars group, where you say, oh, well, you know, Secret Service, the mob, you know, this one, the military, you know, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Jim Mars would just smile and go, yeah. And it's too much for people to fathom. It's too much for people's brains to handle because it was done so well. The cover-up was so intense and so well done. As Hoover sits behind his desk, the head of the FBI, and chuckles on the phone and says, well, the more disinformation and the more stories and the more things that we tell and the more people that we throw in there, and the more confused people get, and they'll just leave it alone. It'll be too much, and they'll just put it down and they'll leave it alone. And they'll walk away. And that's what happened. Very much like Stalin's, the more you tell a lie over and over and repeat it, more people will believe. Eventually, they'll just give up. Don't give up. This needs to be uncovered. And I also want to caution again, I'm nobody, I'm just like you. I'm just an old broad with questions and with a little time to research and dig. Don't believe me, do your own research. But for Pete's sakes, man, this one, we need to keep at it until every bit of the stench is revealed so we don't let it happen again. Because if you think this is 60 years old and there's no use in looking into it, and there's no use in understanding how it was done and why it was done, we're destined to repeat it. And if you don't think we were close to repeating it in Butler, PA, you haven't looked at it. We're not looking at it in the right eyes, with the eyes of the beholder, beholding such an illusion. It's mind-boggling. When you understand that the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing, when you understand compartmentalized, when you understand military operation, military maneuvers, and how it was handled, it's absolutely blows your mind. It really does. So I appreciate you guys putting up with me this weekend. And I wanted to say before I get even more started here, again, I do not know what's going on the Rumble channel as far as Tuesday night movies. We were watching Signs. It got cut. I researched as fast as I could to figure out what could have possibly gone wrong. I believe that was my error. I checked the wrong box. Instead of doing personal, I hit public. They don't like that, and I understand. I hit the wrong box. I was ill, wasn't feeling good, and it got cut off halfway while we were watching it. I went back and fixed it really quick, changed the box. That might not have been good enough because they gave us another 20 minutes, and then they cut it off again right at the end. So sorry. I apologize. I think that was my fault. I tried to send it out to the people who I had their emails to send them a link so they could finish the movie on their own. That's all I could do, because they don't tell me why they're doing it. I have to figure it out. And it's another puzzle. So please forgive me on that. I'm not giving up on Tuesday night movie. I'm going to try one more time on Tuesday night. If it gets cut off again and I hit all the right boxes, then it's obviously something else I'm doing wrong. Other people are doing it. I don't click, I don't, it doesn't go into circulation to get monetization and money on it. So I don't know what, the deal is, and other people are doing it. So unless they send me a reason, I might not be able to do it anymore. I don't know, but I'm going to keep trying. Okay, let's move along. I wanted to lean into a little bit more of, one second, let me find it here. We had gotten so far in the men who killed Kennedy. And I wanted to continue on a little bit here with this wonderful series who was put out by Nigel. Oh, I forget his name. I want to get the right name. So I know the first one is Nigel, but they did such a good job on this. So a little bit more. Remember where we left off? We were leaving off with the witnesses and some of the ones that we're talking about who was behind the grassy knoll. So we're going to pick up a little bit there, and then I'm going to add in some more stuff and stop it at about 15 minutes or so. So let's just get started on this one.
I feel, based upon what I know now, there was what I would call a benign cover-up. Yes, there was. They were concerned about Oswald's connections to the Soviet Union and to Castro. And they were fearful that if the American public were to find this out, they could become so incensed that it could have possibly led to an atomic war.
We have the right to know the truth. If we don't have the truth, everything we build on is a lie. It's like building a building on a false foundation. Sooner or later, it's going to crumble.
I think we must know what happened in November 22, 1963, in order to be a democracy today. And until the truth is told about that day, then we don't know that they're telling the truth today.
Allen Dulles, director of the CIA, until Kennedy fired him, was one of the commissioners responsible for producing the 26-volume Warren Report on the president's assassination. The American media were glowing in their praise of the report that concluded Lee Harvey Oswald was alone responsible. It was only under closer scrutiny that the superficiality of its findings became clear.
The Warren Commission decided that there were 3 shots fired, and the first shot struck the president in the back, exited his throat, went on to strike Governor Connolly in the back and exited in his right chest, and then went through his right wrist and then wound up embedded in his thigh, and the bullet fell out at Parkland Hospital. The Warren Commission also decided the second shot probably missed and flew off into Dealey Plaza somewhere. And the commission decided that the third shot struck the president in the head and killed him. And that's the official version of what happened. And it's interesting, one of the early researchers pointed out that no witness at any time has ever described the assassination as having happened that way. Only the Warren Commission came up with that interpretation, and it's the single assassin theory.
On the morning of the assassination, Bill and Gail Newman had gone down to Dealey Plaza with their children to watch the presidential motorcade pass. They were the closest spectators to the tragedy, and their account is echoed by many others who were there.
The first 2 shots, I didn't realize what they were, but the third shot, after it was fired, I heard Mrs. Kennedy scream, "Oh no, they've shot Jack," and it was just sort of sent a chill over you. It was just terrible.
I can remember seeing the side of the president's ear and head come off. I remember a flash of white and the red and just bits and pieces of flesh exploding from the president's head. At that time, I turned to Gail and said, "That's it, hit the ground." And we turned and hit the ground and covered our children. But when the third shot was fired, I thought it came from directly behind towards the grassy knoll behind me. I based that primarily on the third shot from what I saw of the side of the president's head coming off and from the sound of the rifle, the report of the rifle.
As the official story started coming out and hearing that the shots came from the building, these witnesses started to doubt their own ears. So as the days went by, fewer and fewer of these witnesses would come forward because they just all of a sudden weren't really sure about what they had heard. They were convinced on November 22, 1963 that at least one shot came from the front. But by 4 or 5 days later, then they weren't sure and they didn't come forward at all.
Mary Woodward was a junior reporter on the Dallas Morning News who had joined the lunchtime crowds in Dealey Plaza to watch the Kennedy motorcade. She was the journalist closest to the tragedy and rushed back to her office to file the story in a state of great consternation.
They first of all took me to the office nurse and had me have a tranquilizer because they thought was somewhat hysterical. I think I was behaving quite rationally under the circumstances. But anyhow, I then sat down and wrote the story immediately and actually had completed the story before the news was absolutely confirmed that he was even dead. So the story was absolutely my own impressions. It was not from anything anyone had said or what I had read or heard. Some things I have often said I would hate to swear before a court of law or before God, but one thing I am totally positive of in my own mind is how many shots there were. And there were 3 shots. The second 2 shots were immediate. It was almost as if one were an echo of the other. They came so quickly. The sound of one did not cease until the second shot. With the second and third shots, I did see the president being hit. I literally saw his head explode. So I felt that the shots had come, as I wrote in my article, from behind me and to my right, which would have been in the direction of the grassy knoll and the railroad overpass.
Because it contradicted the sole assassin theory, Mary's eyewitness account was quickly pulled and her version discounted.
Civic leaders, responsible people, whether it be the mayor, the managing editor of the paper, almost felt it a responsibility to kind of not rock the boat, perhaps. The neat answer was the version that came to be the most widely accepted, that there were 3 shots and they had all come from the school book depository building and they were all fired by Lee Harvey Oswald.
We do know that the FBI, as the official investigative body for the Warren Commission, apparently collected all the possible evidence it could find that indicated Lee Harvey Oswald did it and did it alone. Other evidence that pointed to perhaps other people or other locations for shooters was either ignored or deemed to be mistaken or misinterpreted.
I was interviewed by the FBI, but I did not testify before the Warren Commission. It's my understanding the reason I did not go before the Warren Commission was because in my statement that I thought the shots came from directly behind implied the shots were coming from the grassy knoll. This is something apparently the Warren Commission did not want to hear. They wanted to keep the direction of the assassination in the direction of the school book depository.
On that tragic day in Dallas, the routine protection of the President of the United States was compromised from the very beginning, according to military expert Colonel Fletcher Prouty.
What they call protection of the president is an old skill. I went to Mexico City in 1956 when President Eisenhower went to Mexico City. And by that, I mean the security people went there more than a month early to look at every angle of the trip. There are rules and manuals on what we call protection. The Secret Service, that is an organization of limited size, is authorized to call any number of military people. And these are military people who are already trained to augment their forces in a case like this. There's no shortage of people. Ordinarily, a unit of military, I think was called a Special Group Number 113, would have come up from San Antonio, Texas, and would have been deployed all through the streets of Dallas, the important streets of Dallas. That was not done. In fact, the commander was specifically told he wasn't needed. You've all seen the picture of the school book building, where Oswald is supposed to have shot the president. You notice in those pictures there are open windows. If the Secret Service had been there and had done their usual job, none of those windows would have been open. And had anyone opened one of those windows at that time, they would have been on the radio, they would have had a man in that room immediately, and the window would have been closed.
Okay. So I want to point out, I just love you guys. So I want to point out, if I keep having a coughing fit, I'm just going to play that and drink some more tea. We're going to get this out. Thank you for bearing with me. So I wanted you to see that part, and I wanted you to understand a little bit more. Take you back as froze moments. Hey, darling. And Vixen, I'm so glad to see you, honey, and everybody here, Lisa and Henry. I'm so glad to see you, and Scott and everybody, Midwest, Gerald. I'm so glad to see all of y'all. And I definitely want all your input. You guys are putting out great stuff. I was reading it. Yes, all of that is true. For the most part. Here's the deal. I'm going to keep reminding everybody, don't focus on one thing. Don't try to figure, hey, was the mob working with this one? Was this one? Let's leave them in groups for now. Let's leave them in groups. Let's leave organized crime and New Orleans. Hey, it wasn't just New Orleans. It was Chicago. Remember, there were 2 attempts on Kennedy before this. One was 4 days before, I believe. It was a couple of weeks before in Chicago, which got thwarted. The one in Tampa was very close to this one. And remember, I said that Kennedy stayed to thank everybody for getting him through it and doing their job, and stayed late to shake everybody's hand. And you're telling me that just days after a situation like that, going into Dallas, when he was on the plane on Air Force One, he said, now we're going into Crazy Town, because he had so many death threats. They put out flyers that said that Kennedy was wanted for treason. There was a huge right-wing, what was it called? John Birch, and just so much, KKK was just deep there. They didn't like his civil rights. They didn't, his thoughts on that. He had people mad at him for the Bay of Pigs. The CIA had lied to him with Allen Dulles, and he's got the Joint Chief of Staff. He's arguing with Bombs Away LeMay, the general. All these old war hawks that, they want him to go to war, and they want him to bomb Cuba, and they want him to kill Castro, and they want all that. They just want war. They want Vietnam. They're mad at him for wanting to pull out of Vietnam. Remember, he signed the executive order. It had another name. I forget exactly what it was. I've got the document. I'll pull it up later. 263 that said he was going to bring home, he was going to slowly start pulling out of Vietnam. He was going to have 1,000 soldiers come home before Christmas. It was sitting on his desk when he went to Dallas. That thing was signed and changed so fast by LBJ. JFK was still laying in state in the tundra of the Capitol. Hadn't even been buried yet when he changed that, crossed out the 2 paragraphs and changed it to nothing changes in Vietnam. In fact, we're going to escalate. Keep in mind, LBJ had a lot of connections to Bell and Root. What was Bell and Root? Well, it turned into Bell Helicopter. Along with all his oil buddies. The oil buddies were pissed at JFK because he got involved in that and cut their profits by 30% because the public said the oil was too high, and he was like, nope, we're going to fix that. Everybody was mad at Kennedy. Camelot was something that Jackie said because when JFK was in pain, you never heard that till after. Jackie was telling a story about the constant pain that JFK was in because of his back, because of his injuries during World War II when he was PT 109. We've all heard the story, how he carried people on his back and swam, not to one island, but 2. Wrote a message on the coconut to get help, was just a wonderful leader. Okay. He used to be in so much pain, and he had other things going on, the Atkins disease and other stuff. She would put on soothing music for him, and his favorite was the opera Camelot. That's where it comes from. You know, they had problems in their marriage. They had the Secret Service was mad at him because some of these guys were Catholic guys. You know, I hear all that stuff too. Yeah, these are the same Catholic guys that are upset that JFK enough so much that they would want to blow his head off because he's cheating on his wife because they're good Catholic boys, but they were in a stripper bar all night long shooting down moonshine till 5 a.m. before they had to go cover their president in Dallas. They were at the cellar. They were not at the carousel. They were at the cellar. Some of them lost their IDs. 2 of them lost their guns. So again, not one thing, multiple things all at the same time. So if we're looking for that one person that's coordinating all of this, you got to look to somebody who could coordinate most of it. Maybe he wasn't the one who called a hitman that the mob was connected to. Maybe the mob did that. I'm still of the belief that there was more than one team there. Absolutely. And you remember what the lady said? I heard 3 shots. On the last episode, I played you a 21 gun salute. You got 7 guns. They shoot 3 times. What did you hear? You heard 3 shots, but there were 7 guns. Do you think it's possible that more than one rifle was shooting at a time? I think there's absolute proof that there was. The reason the Warren Commission, which is basically just a panel of men that were told, you're going in this room, you're going to look at the evidence, you're going to write it up, and it's going to say this. I'm paraphrasing and I'm simplifying, but I'm telling you the truth. If that's not true, why were witness testimonies changed? They weren't allowed to see them. They didn't get a copy of it to get to approve what was said in the Warren report. Half of them didn't even see it. There were researchers, like I mentioned earlier, that pulled these facts out. It's taken 60 years. Again, I think the problem is that people get on a tangent and there's like, no, it was the mob. The mob did this. The mob did this because Ruby was connected to the mob. Yes. But the mob couldn't get the bubble top off the limo. Couldn't get them to get the army to stand down, the police department to stand down, the sheriff's department to stand down. the windows to stay open. They couldn't make sure that the prisoners that were in the building above the jail, because this happened within a block of the sheriff department, the Dallas police station. Above was a jail. The jail was eye level with the 5th and 6th floor of the school book depository. All those prisoners were hanging at the windows. They all saw people in the windows. Were they ever interviewed? Do you think that they were brought before the Warren Commission? Do you think their statements are in those 26 volumes of what they saw? No, because it didn't fit the narrative. So when you bring in all these factors that you could have heard more than one rifle shooting at one time, now you have the cleanup and you have the fix up. Who had the power to do that? Who had the power to hide the fact that there was more than one bullet found in that limo? And I'm not just talking about the pristine bullet that was found on the gurney of Connolly. Some say it was on Kennedy's. That's the point. There's so much sleight of hand, and that shells just keep moving. You're not sure what shell the ball is under, and they keep you confused. Don't you let them. Don't you let them. Focus in on what they didn't want you to hear. What didn't they want you to hear? Let's go back a minute. We'll revisit this gentleman right here. Let me do this. Let's go back a minute. This is what we spoke of, just real fast, of what we, a little bit of a review of what we spoke of in the other episodes, okay? This, of course, is Joseph P. Kennedy. This is the father of all the Kennedys. This is where it starts. He's a businessman, a millionaire, a philanderer. Couldn't cheat enough on his wife. Real pushy dad. He picked who was going to do what, and by God, you did it. Okay. We could really delve into him and his bootlegging and his gambling and his stock markets of his business way. Just trust me, there's lots you can go and look on him. But the reason he's important still is because this man here and his, you could definitely say he was a Nazi sympathizer and the things that he was involved in the war. It was known then just as much as it is now. You've got those rumors. Hey, honey. Hey, cat. So the reason he was what he was, of course, the kids come out that way and the way they're raised and all that. That's not the point. The point is other people knew what he was. LBJ used that to really rib at Bobby mostly and JFK. He would say things in meetings that would bring this stuff up, the bootlegging, who he sympathized with during the war, what was he doing during the war, things like that, because LBJ and the Kennedys always had a riff going. They knew what LBJ was. They called him the Secret Service for Kennedy, called him, I think, Uncle Corn Pone and Mrs. Pork Chop or some kind of mess like that. I can't remember what it was. Dude was a pig. He deserved it. But the point was, there was a riff, and it was awful. And it started here with Joe. And that's not all he did. Not a great fella. Okay. So we're not going to go into all that now. This is the Kennedys. This is the family. This is the whole brood. And you can pick out who's who, right? Here's Joe. He died in the war. He was the one that Joe Sr. had pegged for presidential future. When he passed, he reluctantly, and I do mean reluctantly, moved to John. And John knew that he was going to, there was always competition between these people. That's the way they liked it. Strange family. Look, you couldn't pay me to be in something like this. It just would be a nightmare for me to have to. This is almost like being in royalty, where you have to be a certain way and dress a certain way, and it's terrible. Yes, it is on Rumble too, Cat. It should be, unless something happened. Let me double check, because it went dead on me. I think we're good. Are we good on Rumble? Yes, it is on Rumble too. Supposedly so. I'm sorry, guys. I got one computer down over here, so I can't even tell how we're doing on YouTube. But I hope hello to everybody out there. I love each and every one of you. Okay. Yes, it looks like we still are. So anyway, see Teddy here on the. Wouldn't you just love to go to these kids? It's look, you guys don't want to go down the path you're going down. Your future is not that great. Let's take a different path here. Don't you want to just warn them? Poor Rose. Her own dad got her to have a lobotomy, for Pete's sake. Kept sending her to insane asylums. Listen, rich people, money don't make you happy. Trust me. There he is. Well, he looks happy. It's because he's a scoundrel. All right. So anyway, we'll move past that. Let's move past. There's Jackie, wonderful Jackie. I love this picture because, of course, she's got the cat. But I wouldn't trade places with her either. On there, poor Ted. Okay. Yeah, you had the war. You had all kinds of stuff going on in Vietnam. My God, 58,000 and more. That's just our side. The death and that this caused. That's why in Tapestry I ended with, the man just wanted to stop a war. He wasn't perfect. That's for sure. But he did a lot of good things for the people for the right reasons, I believe. That's just my thoughts at this time. Wouldn't want to have been married to him. Okay. So this is it right here. Every time you see LBJ and JFK and they get these candid shots, look at the way LBJ's looking at him. Okay? Look at this. Look at the. Now, again, they could be thinking anything, but my God, right? All right. So here's Mr. Bulldog himself. This is Herbert Hoover. What a character. Head of the FBI, 4 decades. Had a manila envelope on everybody. His number one game was blackmail. This is how LBJ became vice president. I kid you not. This was LBJ's long time. I think like 11 years, maybe more. Don't quote me on that. LBJ's neighbor, very good friends. LBJ used him. He used LBJ all across the board, thick as thieves. But anyway, Hoover sent his cronies in to see JFK. They walk into the office. They put down the manila envelope. It says, we've got you in compromising positions with all these different people. It wasn't hard with JFK. All you had to do is follow him around on a Monday afternoon and you catch him with somebody, I'm sure. I'm sure it wasn't that bad, but, I digress. Anyway, it was pretty bad. But he was something. But so was LBJ. So the White House was really rocking during this time. Trust me on that. There was a lot going on. So he throws the envelope. His cronies throw the envelope down on the thing. It says, look, we've got you in the compromising position. This is what you're going to do. He had already picked another VP to run with him. He said LBJ is going to be on the ticket and Hoover stays in office. That was the deal. Or all of this comes out. Kennedy couldn't resist it. He's trapped like a rat, right? He's got to do it. Bobby loses his mind. You got to be crazy. He goes down to talk to LBJ and says, you can't accept this because JFK says, look, I'll ask him. He's never going to accept it. He hates us. And, we're two totally different people, on the same ticket. It's nuts. LBJ goes, hold on. That's a true story, by the way. He says to Bobby Baker, and I'm off the top of my head. So if you come at me with, I said, look, I'm paraphrasing off the top of my head here. But it was very close to, Bobby, I need you to go and look and see how many presidents died in office. Right? And he goes, why? What are you talking about? And LBJ says, and there was others in the room that witnessed this. He said, just shut up and go do it. And just do what I freaking tell you. So Bobby, he goes and looks it up and he gets the answer and he comes back and he says, he tells him how many died in office. I don't remember. Was it 7? How many? So when the president dies in office, who becomes president? VP. And he says, and it happens like every, 17 years or something. And he goes, and this is like the 15th year. And LBJ famously says, I'm a gambling man. I like those odds. I'm going to take it. And he does. So Bobby's head explodes. And again, no pun intended. I didn't mean to say that, but I apologize. And he goes down and he starts yelling at LBJ, and LBJ pulls off this thing. And he's messing with Bobby. And he says, "Oh, come on, Bobby." He says, I can't do that. Your brother's asked me to run with him. He wants me as his VP. I can't let him down. Come on, Bobby. And he starts doing this thing that LBJ does. And anytime LBJ got himself caught in the corner, he would pretend to cry and real tears. This guy was a psychomaniac. He really was. I mean, no offense to the Johnson Museum and all those people who still think he's, God's gift to whatever. But, facts are facts. And the facts, I stand with those. This guy was a nutter. And he would cry and he kept saying, he's running, he's dragging. He loved to drag people down. He used people as footstools. This was just a horrid human being. So anyway, runs his VP, obviously, right? So this is how it all started. Okay. Who had the power? Okay. And not to mention that within an hour of the shooting, Hoover's on the phone to LBJ. Already has a description, address on Oswald, all the stuff. You've got your man. No need to look any further. You got your man. Really? How'd you get all that information? There wasn't computers and stuff back then. They already knew who they were going to use as the patsy. Not just one patsy. Multiple patsies all over the place, ready at a moment's notice. Keep that in mind. This is what they do. There's Bobby Baker there, little LBJ. Keep in mind, LBJ, there was already a court case going on. LBJ was going to go to jail if he wasn't running. If he wasn't president, he was going to jail. There was a big scandal going on. We can get deeper into that later on. Okay, and then he's got all his cronies. So let me run through this really, really quick and get down to where I'm talking. Look at the looks. And look at his future head of the CIA and president, by the way. Okay, here, Dealey. I wanted to get to, the grassy knoll. So if you look here, you can see on this map, the grassy knoll. See where the arrow is pointing. This is Elm Street. That's why it says Elm. Okay. And then you have the main route that comes through. I don't know if you guys can see my arrow pointer or not, but this is the motorcade route. It comes through here. Okay. This is the school book depository. This is the 6th floor right here, window that the sniper's nest is supposed to be. Okay. If you were going to hit somebody coming at you, isn't that a perfect shot right there? I wonder why they waited till it came here. Took that turn on Elm. Look at that. Tight little turn there. Bringing it through all these buildings. Here's the triple underpass, right? So there's people up here. That should have never happened. Wouldn't have been anybody on any buildings, any open windows. Okay. Here's the railroad tower right here. And if you remember, you heard about the railroad tower last episode from a man called Lee Bowers. You remember that? Okay. There's the Deltex building right there, right here. And here's the, there's called the Dallas County Records building right here. This right here, that's the police station. This is right here where the jail is. The windows, look at that. All of this was prisoners looking in these windows. You think they ever asked them what they saw? They talked. Won't believe the things that they saw. Okay, so go into that. You heard about last week the puff of smoke. And I was saying, how many people are behind this fence? Because if everybody's correct and we believe everybody, we don't throw anybody out. How many people did we have back there behind the fence? Well, let's see. The grassy knoll is small, elevated area in Dealey Plaza, Dallas, Texas, to the right of the presidential motorcade path along Elm Street that I just showed you. A wooden picket fence approximately 5 feet tall ran along the top of the knoll separating the plaza from the parking lot and railroad yard. This fence has been central to the conspiracy theory suggesting a second shooter or multiple conspirators were positioned behind it, firing shots or coordinating the assassination. Eyewitness accounts and photographic and acoustical analysis and later confessions have fueled speculation about who was there. And I'm still asking that because, as I said, if we just don't throw anybody out and we believe everybody, the James Files, we believe what we saw last week, the young man who would just got out of boot camp. Well, I don't know if you call it boot camp in the Navy, but let's just say it for lack of a better. I was Army. I don't know what they called it in the Navy, but just got out of that and he was on his way to Alaska. He said the next day I was on my way to Alaska, and they showed him the picture, and he was in the picture with the shooter behind the puff of smoke and the shooter that looked like he was in a uniform behind the fence. Remember that? You had him, you had multiple people. Okay. Eyewitness accounts. Where am I? Eyewitness accounts of photographic acoustic. Right. So you had all of them. Here's about what it looks like today. They tried to keep it as much, as the same. And right here is the beginning of the triple overpass. Okay. Eyewitness present in Dealey Plaza provided varying accounts of people behind the picket fence. Again, when the shots were out and the final shot was hit and the car took off, where did they run? Everybody's going up the grassy knoll. They weren't running towards the 6th floor depository. I wonder why. This is Lee Bowers. Okay. So one of the researchers that I really, really respect an awful lot. I mean, there's so many of them that just did such a great body of work themselves that, like the Mark Lanes, the Jim Mars, the Vince Palomera, all these different ones, the early ones, the housewife who moved her kids and her dog to go through, these countless hours of just pounding you and putting your heart and your just out of sheer patriotism and wanting to seek the truth. Lee Bowers is one of them. Okay. So, I'm sorry, Penn Jones Jr. is one of them. And he, a wonderful character. And I'm going to introduce him more tomorrow night with Steve. But Penn Jones is one of those researchers that I just really connected with right away. It's only been recently, earlier when I was in this, probably about 20 years ago or so, I remember picking up his book and reading it and reading about the witnesses and things. I found an old interview. It just blew my mind. And I found a couple of them here recently, the past couple of months. And Penn Jones is like my spirit animal in this, between Jim Mars and Penn. Penn was a brigadier general and hated the military. He got out and bought a small newspaper in Midlothian, Texas, which is about 25 miles outside of Dallas. And when it happened, this man is something else. And I'll tell you more about his story. Just a fantastic individual. Would not take any crap. Never gave up digging. And really put his heart and soul in. And every week he would have an article in the paper. He wrote 4 volumes of a book he called Forgive My Grief. And in his own admission, spent 3 to 4 days just bawling his eyes out when Kennedy was shot. And did this out of pure honor to Kennedy and the truth. Wonderful individual. I highly recommend Forgive My Grief, or if you can find an old interview, watch it, listen to it. He deserves to be remembered. He's another one. I just wanted him to make sure he was mentioned. So, author researcher Penn Jones Jr. in his book Forgive My Grief said about Lee Bowers, his car drifted, according to 2 eyewitnesses, into a concrete bridge embankment at 9:30 a.m. going at a speed of 50 miles an hour. The doctor from Midlothian, this happened 2 miles from where Penn Jones lives, The doctor from Midlothian who attended Bowers stated that he did not have a heart attack and that he thought Bowers was in some sort of strange shock. Now, Lee Bowers is a great story. Very, very sad. Because he was one of the ones they didn't want you to hear what he had to say. They shut him up. They shut him up after he spoke to Mark Lane. You saw pieces of it in the last episode. And I wanted to reintroduce him because he connected Mark Lane and Penn Jones for me. And such a powerful statement that he made because he was in the train tower, the lookout tower, and saw so much. So his position, Bowers was in a signal tower 120 yards north of the grassy knoll with a clear view of the area behind the fence. His testimony, now this is in the Warren Commission, what they did to him. In his 1964 Warren Commission testimony, Bowers reported seeing two men near the fence before the shooting. One was middle-aged, heavy-set, wearing a white shirt and dark trousers. The other was in his mid-20s, wearing a plaid shirt or a coat. He noted a flash of light or smoke in the vicinity during the shooting, but couldn't confirm their actions. In 1966 interview with Mark Lane, he reiterated the presence of these men and the usual activity. So with Lee Bowers, we have a count of two men behind the fence. Wasn't that what the other gentleman, the deaf mute, said as well? So again, we're just trying to keep a count. When I start bringing in people like James Files and others, the count gets higher. Let's go back and take a look at what Lee said in his own words, if I can find it. And here we go. In his own words. Why? Because they didn't want you to hear them.
Occupation. I'm Vice President of Lockwood Meadows Incorporated, which is a real estate land development company. And where were you employed on November 22nd, 1963? At that time, I was employed as a tower operator for the Union Terminal Company. And where were you at about 12:30 that day? I was at the south end of the terminal of the tower building, rather looking down toward the terminal and observing the motorcade as was everyone else in the area. Could you tell us what you heard and what you saw from about 12 noon until the time that the shots were fired? Well, for some time that morning, since perhaps 10 o'clock in the morning, we had the area pretty well sealed off, and the policemen had been stationed on the triple underpass as well as other strategic corners in the area, so that there was very little traffic moving into this area at this time. This is a dead-end area which is used primarily for parking. After 11 or 11:30, there was practically no movement in the area whatsoever. However, about 12:10, give or take 5 minutes, there was a car which entered the area and probed around for some time. This car was a 59 Oldsmobile station wagon with a out-of-state license. It was muddy as if it had just come in off of the road from some area where it was a red sandy area. It was occupied by one male who spent 3 or 4 minutes in the area looking it over, and then as he found out, left by the entrance, which is the only way in and out of the area at that time. Not too long after that, perhaps 5 or 6 minutes, a car of a totally different description, also occupied by one male, entered the area. Now, this man performed a similar action, and he toured down around the area, probing to examine the exits, and seemed at one or more occasions to have a mic or something resembling such an instrument up to his face. Just a few moments after that, the third car came into the area, and these were the only 3 cars that entered this area during this specific period. third car was a 61 or 2 Chevrolet. This car was muddy all the way up to the windows as if it had just come in off the road. It had an out-of-state license identical to the first car of the series. And it also had political stickers on it, which were not only for the same candidate, but were identical in nature and color, so that they appeared to have been from the same group. This car was occupied by one male who spent a little bit more time in the area than the others, and probed down by the side of the tower where I was located. I could not state that these cars left the area entirely, because after they got back onto the extension of Elm Street in front of the school depository building, they were lost to my vision, so that they could have remained very close by. Immediately after the shots were fired, of course, was mass confusion, to put it mildly. But the area was immediately sealed off by, I would say, at least 50 police within 3 to 5 minutes. The first one to appear on the scene, other than those, of course, who were standing around, including 2 on top of the triple underpass, was one who rode a motorcycle up the incline coming up from the lower portion of Elm Street. And he rode perhaps 2/3 of the way up or more before he deserted his motorcycle. At the time of the shooting, in the vicinity of where the 2 men I've described were, there was a flash of light, there was something which occurred which caught my eye in this immediate area on the embankment. And what this was, I could not state at that time, and at this time I could not identify it, other than there was some unusual occurrence, a flash of light or smoke or something, which caused me to feel like something out of the ordinary had occurred there.
In reading your testimony, Mr. Bowers, it appears that just as you were about to make that statement, you were interrupted in the middle of the sentence by the commission counsel, who then went into another area.
Well, that's correct. I was there only to tell them what they asked, and so that when they seemed to want to cut off the conversation, I felt like that was, as far as I was concerned, that was the end of it.
Mr. Bowers, how many shots did you hear?
There were 3 shots, and these were spaced with 1 shot, then a pause, and then 2 shots in very close order, such as perhaps almost on top of each other, while there was some pause between the first and the second shots.
Did you tell that to the Dallas police?
Yes, I told this to the police, and then also told it to the FBI, and also I had a discussion 2 or 3 days later with them concerning this, and they made no comment, other than the fact that when I stated I felt like the second and third shots could not have been fired from the same rifle, they reminded me that I wasn't an expert, and I had to agree.
You know, where Oswald.
Try to be careful by hitting the right buttons. So there we go. What did he say that was profound to you? Was it because he saw all this activity behind the fence? Was it because he was so detailed about the bumper stickers, the political bumper stickers that all seemed to be from the same political side? The flash, the number of shots. I want you to keep in mind, and I'll show it before the series is over. I'll show it several times. The 21 gun salute, when you hear rifles shoot at the same time, it sounds like 1 shot. Very much like notes. If you've ever been in a choir, or you've played an instrument where you hit that harmonics, where everything just sounds like one sound, it's so perfect. This is what I believe happened, because if you look at the Zapruder film, and I mean the one that is not missing frames, it's not been doctored. If you want to understand about the Zapruder film, I highly recommend you follow Mr. Grodin. I don't want to get the wrong first name, so I'm calling him Mr. because he's been in this. I think he was 18 when he started. He is actually in the series we're watching. He's a young man with the black beard, black hair. And I'll show him to you when pops up again. But he's still in it. He's still in it. He was just on America's Untold Stories, and I want to say loosely, I hate to say expert, let's say specialist on the Zapruder film. Okay. So I would lean there for your information, as well as research others. But I can tell you, you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody who knows more about it than he does. He was the one that took it on Geraldo and brought it out to the public. The only other time it had been seen, as we saw in the JFK movie, was at the Jim Garrison Clay Shaw trial in New Orleans in 69. Okay. So if you look at the Zapruder film, when Lee Bowers says that there was two shots, almost one, you had one and then a little bit of a few second pause there, and then the two almost together, I think that's when all the shots came. That's me saying I believe that that's when all the shots came. Because if you look, Kennedy grabs his neck, first shot, okay? Then he reacts. He's hit again. There were 2 bullet wounds. You will see this coming up in the future on his back. Okay, we can now they've released the pictures of the shirt and everything else. All matches up. Remember, I told you the autopsy drawing was changed by Gerald Ford. He has admitted this multiple times, 3 that I know of separate times, that he changed that for clarity. Okay. He also was an unelected president because he became vice president, right? With all that shift going on with Nixon and Watergate and all that. Was that really what you think it is? What it was? Or was that another coup? That's a whole nother show. I remember that one. I was in high school when that was going down. So, what did Lee say? He also told you that when he was being interviewed for the Warren Commission, he could only answer what he was asked, and they never asked him. If they didn't want to know it, they didn't ask him. They manipulated all of this. Okay? You see, Mark Lane, now him we just lost, I think in the past 10 years. I spent his whole life. He was an attorney. He tried to be the attorney in posthumously for Lee Harvey Oswald. He said he should have a lawyer. He never had a trial. You're not saying allegedly shot JFK. You're saying he did it. He never had a trial. And if he had a trial with the evidence that was brought forth, I don't think there would have been a conviction. That's just my thought. Because they didn't have it. They didn't have it. The evidence was either completely changed, right down to a future president. Well, that was his payoff for changing it and doing what he could do on the Warren Report. Speculation, I know. But come on. Right? You change an autopsy photo of the President of the United States autopsy in an official. How could a nation stand for this? And on top of that, you're going to throw in the magic bullet? For the love of all that's holy. The magic bullet who stopped in midair, turned right, went down, and went into Connolly. No, that's not what the Zapruder film says. Because when all the bullets hit, when Mr. Teague got hit in the cheek from a reflection from the bullet hitting the curb, we heard all that last week. He came up, piece of concrete came up and cut his cheek. We've got a sign with a bullet hole in it. We've got multiple bullets being found in the car by different Secret Service people. We got a magic bullet turned in pristine that supposedly went through JFK and did all this in midair and hits Connolly, goes through his shoulder, comes out his around the top of his belly button, goes in the top of his wrist, comes out the bottom of his wrist, turns left, goes into his thigh, and is lodged there. Comes out pristine, yet there are more pieces still in Connolly's body, buried in the ground right now, than missing on that bullet. You know why? There's no pieces missing on the bullet, yet there's fragments in Connolly. Explain that, Lucy. When they wanted to exhume Connolly's body, the family, of course, said no. Yet there we have it. More facts that are hard to get rid of. So how did they keep the story quiet? Well, when people were saying things they didn't like, they just killed them. We talked about Richard Belzer's book, Hit List. We talked about the long list running on the movie Executive Decision, made in 1975, that talked about the man that was killed with a karate chop to the neck. The multiple people that were killed in one car accidents. Lee Bowers was one of them. Penn Jones talks about him quite a bit in several interviews and in the book, Forgive My Grief. So right out of the gate, this is the most dastardly deeds ever portrayed on a country. They did not want us to think that this was a banana republic. You know why? Because it's a banana republic. If they're going to do something like this, if it's not the vote of the people, if you can change it with a bullet and some lies and then kill a couple of extra 100 people and then start a war to distract everybody and just make money, kill a couple 58,000 people. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And we cannot allow it to stand no matter how much time has passed, because it's still happening. We got to learn from history, people. That's why I'm spending so much time. And just like I spent time last summer on Liberty and spent time on Lincoln and, anything I dive into, whether it's the Villisca Axe murder house or Lizzie Borden or the Lincoln assassination. This is important. It's our history. And we got to learn from it. We cannot allow it to continue. I don't care if they're all gone. Doesn't matter. There's still some people alive. Marina's still alive. Ruth Payne is still alive, and several others. Okay, so let's go back to this gentleman talking about, and I want you to keep remembering Lee Bowers and how together that man, there was no hesitation in what he spoke. There was a conviction and a patriotism and probably a sense of duty and right and wrong. And he was going to speak on what he saw, and nobody was going to change his mind. Because if what we heard earlier was several did. They started questioning their own sanity. You spend this kind of time in a room being interrogated by police officers who are yelling in your face. You saw it in the JFK movie, very well portrayed. You didn't see that. You're mistaken. Are you an expert? How many shots did you hear? But you're not a firearms expert, are you? I mean, they knew what they were doing. They intimidated the witnesses. They took their property, their pictures, and everything else. And if that didn't work, they killed them. I don't know why this jumped. Now I got to find the spot. Give me a minute. I'll find it. It jumped on me. Come on, guys. All right, right about here. Is it there? Let's try it.
So it was a very large tape recorder that was made especially for intelligence.
I'll find it, guys. I know that guy was standing up talking. Clicked it and it changed on me. All right. Right about here.
Number 113 would have come up from San Antonio, Texas, and would have been deployed all through the streets of Dallas, the important streets of Dallas. That was not done. In fact, the commander was specifically told he wasn't needed. You've all seen the picture of the school book building, you know, where Oswald is supposed to have shot the president. You notice in those pictures there are open windows. If the Secret Service had been there and had done their usual job, none of those windows would have been opened. And had anyone opened one of those windows at that time, they would have been on the radio, they would have had a man in that room immediately, and the window would have been closed. You see, that's protection. That didn't take place. In fact, there were no Secret Service people on the ground
That's
around
true.
Dealey Plaza that afternoon.
That's
They were
true.
told they were not needed.
There was further unprofessional conduct concealed at the time. The night before the assassination, most of the presidential bodyguard spent a drunken evening at this notorious Fort Worth nightclub, some staying until 5 a.m. Drinking alcohol while on a tour of duty contravened all Secret Service regulations. It could well explain their failure to react when the deadly shots strafed the presidential car only hours later in what was to be a classic ambush.
Instead of going straight down the street and then to the Trade Mart, he made this 90-degree turn and then another very sharp turn in front of the school book depository building. Now, the Secret Service have rules against that. The rules are that if the car is slowed down below 44 miles an hour, you must then protect it fully in other ways, such as not digressing and going around corners and all that, because when you slowed him around that corner, you opened up field of fire from three directions, behind him, to the side, and from in front. And of course, he was killed right in that position that had been set up by the selection of that route.
To this day, the gruesomeness of Kennedy's killing haunts those who were closest to the president. Riding a few feet from the limousine was Dallas police outrider Bobby Hargis.
There's another motorcycle officer by the name of Buddy Brewer that came up to me and says, "Bob, you have something on your lip." And he took his finger like that, and it was a piece of the president's brain and a piece of his skull bone that had hit me on the lip. The watery blood and stuff that came from his wound had splattered my motorcycle and all over my uniform and my helmet and my face. And all of us felt real bad. Every single soul in the police department felt bad. And you could tell it by just looking at them. That's why I had all the bad dreams. One of the nightmares is as we're turning off of Main Street onto Houston Street, I can see up at the school book depository, I can see something shiny in one of the windows. And then the shine goes off and becomes a gun barrel. And I turn around on my motorcycle to try to tell the Secret Service people that there's something up there, and I scream and I yell and they don't hear me. And I do this all the way until the president gets shot and no one hears me.
In the ensuing chaos, police officers at first acted independently, but within minutes their attention was focused on the Texas School Book Depository building and its open windows. All the floors were systematically searched, but the first hard evidence was discovered in the southeast corner of the 6th floor by Dallas Police Detective Luke Mooney.
Immediately saw the area and with some books had been stacked up and the window was half open. Now this window was not all the way open. It was only a half pane open, which is something of this nature, high up off the windowsill. And I spotted the spent cartridges They were lying approximately in this position. The first one was here. The second one was a foot or so from the other one. And then the third one was over in this approximate position, which the open window was like this, more so to speak, but it's an angle. I secured the area and let no one into that particular spot where the sniper's nest was, where I had seen the spent shells. And someone brought the message up that the president was DOA, was deceased. And at that time, you could have heard a pin drop. You talk about touching your heart, it did. And, pardon me. We were standing there talking and trying to reach our composure. And this wasn't brought out in the statement that there was a book there. And she looked over at it. And the was open. And why on this face of this book was about this size was a picture of Christ. And it says, Christ leads the way.
Outside Parkland Hospital, grief overcame the waiting crowd as the president's death was confirmed. The first to break the news was Senator Ralph Yarborough.
I knew he was dead. I'd been around enough violence in my life to know he was a dead man. And the press came up and they asked me what had happened. So I said, there's been a deed of horror. An excalibur has sunk beneath the waves. I thought that would tell them, in effect, what had happened without my saying he was dead.
We made valiant and unceasing efforts to resuscitate this man who was mortally wounded. And I think had we taken the opposite attack and said, oh, this man is dead, that even today people would be questioning and telling us stories about mortally wounded people who had been resuscitated when all hope was lost. So instead of taking that approach, we took the approach.
I stopped it there for a reason. When you see a police officer breaking down like that, it's hard to imagine that a group of police officers, this being the Dallas Police Department, was all in on it. I don't think anybody is saying that. I don't think anybody is saying that every Secret Service agent was in on it, that every person who was in the mob in New Orleans or Chicago or anywhere else for that matter was in on it, and they all knew what was going down. Nobody I know is saying that at all, that I respect, that I've learned to listen to, that I've learned to take a little weight on their theories and their ideas and even speculation, because they'll say, this is where the facts stop. Now you have to speculate that he got from point A to point B because we know he got to B. What we don't know is how he got there, for example. And they might throw in some ideas of what might have gone on and how that person got to point B. Everybody is very careful that is serious in the research, JFK Research Society, whatever you want to call it, that group. And then you've got, I think it splits into two, where they get to a certain point and they'll go, I'll believe everything, but I'm not going over here. The number one being a lot of people won't go to LBJ because they'll just go, no, there's no way. I believe he's in the cover up. I don't believe that he was part of it in the beginning. And then you've got the people that look at the whole thing and go, look, there was so many people in on this. The ones that had the power, the ones that, is it a coincidence that the mayor of Dallas, Cabell, his brother was in the CIA, and JFK has said publicly he was going to splinter it into 1,000 pieces and throw it to the wind. I paraphrase, but I'm close. He had fired Alan Dulles because he believed he was lied to about the Bay of Pigs. And the two under him, their name escapes me at the moment, resigned and or were fired. People actually argue about which one of those it was. Kind of like today. Was he resigned? Was he fired? Or was he made an ambassador to something? Because that's another way of just getting rid of somebody. In most cases. At least when it's done in a certain way. Let's just leave that sit there. So, can you have people on the force that in a time of such great turmoil and confusion, and that's why I showed you the hallway. You had people standing there for not hours, days. Days. The TV that weekend was off the chain. It was just this for days. And then Oswald got shot. It's a hell of a weekend. It's a hell of a weekend. And it's important, I think, to remember that it was such a power-packed weekend. The president getting shot. People gathered around these small black and white TVs trying to adjust the antenna, getting the kids to hold the antenna so you can get a clear picture just to see what's happening next. Watching people like Walter Cronkite take off his glasses and look into the camera and tell you that your president is dead. Do you know that there are people that were in that room with Walter Cronkite said he practiced that for 20 minutes with the tears and does that mean that Walter Cronkite was in on it? No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's a lot going on all at the same time. And it's easy to focus on one thing and go, you know what? Because this man was crying and he talked about this picture and how much it touched him. Do I believe his story? I absolutely believe it. I have no reason not to believe it. I think there were people that were within that group that were just doing their job, that was trying to do the next thing, that were so caught up in emotion and in the chaos. And when they were handed something and told to give it to somebody else or told to call somebody and tell them to be somewhere, they did it. You are going to hear during this series names of people that are so complex. Officer Tippit. Who shot Officer Tippit and why? What the hell was Officer Tippit doing on 10th and Patton? And what was it called? Oakdale? I'll have it for you next week. What was he doing there? Did he know Ruby? Plenty of facts he did. Ruby knew all the cops. But then you're going to see a police officer come out that looks like he knows what he's talking about. He's the captain of the force. You've got others coming out, standing in front of the cameras, having a moment, stepping up to the plate and saying, none of my cops knew Ruby. None of my cops went to the carousel. And mean it. And he makes it believable. It's just not true. Talk to anybody that worked at the carousel that ever gave an interview, has ever had an interview in a book, or came out of the shadows to tell their story. They'll tell you, Ruby knew all the cops. I've sat here with Mark Shaw, who worked with Melvin Belli, who handled the Ruby trial. And he's told what he's uncovered about all that. That Ruby definitely knew all the police officers. Not all of them hung there, but when you went there and you're a police officer, a Dallas police officer, you didn't pay for your drinks. You were treated like a king. Every woman that worked there, every person that worked there was told, drop everything, the cops come first. And you'll have the captain of the police department come out and go, no, we took a survey. None of our police officers knew Ruby or ever went to the carousel. There was 4 police officers that went there, but they were all on calls. They were all on duty. They never went there to drink or watch any girls or anything else. And they can make it very believable. Their careers and everything else is, and in some cases, their lives depend on it. Of course, you're going to make it believable. So don't be swayed by that. Put on your good filters and look at that and take the facts out and say, okay, is that fact or speculation? And do your own research. But you're going to hear Officer Tippit knew Ruby. I believe that's true. I believe that's true. He may or may not have been cheating on his wife. Does it change things? What was he doing that day? Why, when the president of the United States in Dallas just got shot, taken to Parkland Hospital, every cop known to man and everybody else is downtown, why is Officer Tippit outside of that? Why were the audio, radio recordings or whatever from the dispatch changed? Was he told to be there? Was he looking for somebody? Was he looking for Oswald? He was sitting at the the glow and slow or the slow and go gas station watching traffic coming out of Dallas. Was he waiting on somebody? We'll find out about that. How did Oswald get from the school book depository, having his Coke, meeting the girl, not the girls on the stairs, seeing him in the lunchroom, not seeing him come down the stairs? You had the manager of the school book depository and Officer Bowers, I believe it was. Was that his name? Anyway. See him and say, does he work here? He said, yes, he works here. He's fine. Said that Lee didn't look nervous, sweaty, like he just ran down 6 flights of stairs. Right? How did he get from there to the theater? And he supposedly went home and got a gun and put on his jacket at his rooming house or boarding house that he was at, right? And supposedly while he was there, a police car pulled up and beeped the horn twice. Tit-tit. That's what his landlady said. She was there trying to adjust the TV. The president had just been shot. They broke into the soaps. And now it's going to be wall-to-wall coverage about this and the constant changing of the information. First, it's a Mauser they found for 2 days. It's a Mauser. That changed to Mannlicher Carcano. All of a sudden, all this weird evidence shows up. They find 3 wallets. All Lee Harvey Oswald's. Where are the 3 wallets? Well, you've got one wallet found at Ruth Payne's. Ruth Payne's house is where Marina and the 2 kids were staying. And Lee's staying at this bed and breakfast not far away, whatever it was, a rooming house. Like an old, a lady renting a room, basically, is what it was. His wallet was where Marina was. They found one there. They found one on Oswald at the theater. Had it on him with 2 sets of IDs. Lee Harvey Oswald and Alex Heidel. And then they find another one. Where? Lo and behold, where Officer Tippit is shot. Dead in the street. That's a whole nother ballgame. Why? What did the witnesses see? Who did they see? How many did they see? And why was another wallet found there with Lee Harvey Oswald's ID in it? And if it was Lee Harvey Oswald that shot Tippit, as you're led to believe, isn't that why he was arrested at the theater? They said you killed the police officer. It wasn't for the president at first, remember? When he's being interviewed, the police have him. He says, I haven't been charged with that. I've only been told I shot a police officer, which I didn't do. I didn't shoot anybody. I was about a day before he said, I'm just a patsy. Because if you notice, Lee Harvey Oswald's demeanor changed from beginning to end in that wild weekend. At first, he's arrested. And if you look at him in the shots that we have and the little bit of footage that we have, he's more and less active. He's got a little chip. You know, the police act him, well, who are you? Are you Lee Harvey Oswald or Alex Heidel? He says, you're the cops. You figure it out. He still hadn't got his phone call yet. He hadn't been read his Miranda rights. He hasn't been charged with anything. He says he wants to call the ACLU. He wants a lawyer. They don't answer his call. They don't call. Let me say that right. He calls out and asks for legal representation, and nobody calls. Let's put it that way. None of the people he called out. He did get one call. He called one guy. We'll get into that in another episode because Lee needs his whole own episode. He was 24 years old. This is the most complicated 24-year-old, I think, in history. When you really start digging on Lee Harvey Oswald. I believe he was exactly what he said he was. He was a patsy. I've listened to extensive interviews from Marina when she first started out, when they had her locked up. They whisked her away and put her in a hotel room and just kept grilling her. Her English got extremely better real quick. You know, she pretended she didn't understand anything. She was playing a thing. Marina's her whole own story. This is the most complicated monster of true crime I think that's ever happened. And I think that's the category it belongs in. Several T's. True crime. Terrible. Treasonous. It's a coup. It's definite conspiracy. It's just what has happened over decades is that we cannot focus on the fact that it was a crime perpetrated on not just the Kennedys and our nation, but for every generation that came after that, once we allowed it to happen and didn't stand. How do you do that? When you can't get anybody to focus on anything, there's so much information. It's like being inside of a pinball machine, where you just, boop, 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 boop. Or what are those poppers where all the balls are just flying around and it's insanity. And if you got too close, they just killed you. In the beginning between 63, I think probably up to about 68, 69, things were starting to ease off and losing people around this case. And Penn Jones and Mark Lane are definitely ones to focus on if you want to hear about that. Also, Richard Belzer and his book Hit List. You'll hear about, and Mark Shaw with Dorothy Kilgallen and Marilyn Monroe. You could probably add her in there down the line. She threatened to have, I'm gonna have a press conference on Monday and I'm gonna spill the beans. Well, she was gone, wasn't she? She never got to give that press conference. Mark and I talk about that. And I'll also be honest enough to tell you that there are people in certain realms of all these researchers that'll tell you they don't even they don't even add Dorothy Kilgallen in there into the deaths. They don't even want to hear it because it doesn't fit. It does fit. It's a thread and it belongs in the picture. You can't alter the picture. You can't do what they're doing. You can't alter the picture. I believe if we have a obligation to keep pulling the dirt back off of this grave that they want buried and forgotten, we got to get it right, and we can't do what they're doing. So we can't fight amongst ourselves like, look, what do you got? Sit down, tell me, what do you have? What are your beliefs? What are your theories? What are your facts? Let's see them. We can't allow them to do what they were doing before. The new Walter Cronkites, the new people that are just following out and getting behind the phone and go, hey, look at me. I've got a piece of information, breaking news. And say, I read one document in the files and now I think this person did it. No, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. And I think we're way past the point of lone gunmen. When you got a bunch of prisoners up there telling you they're seeing guys in that window, they're seeing guys over here in this window, there's a guy on the roof over there. Decades later, there's a guy, this lone guy, this lone guy, he's up on the roof. He's a havoc dude. He's fixing the air conditioners on top of the Dell Tech building. And they removed the large air conditioner and, the casing on it. 30-06 casing rolls out. Was there somebody on top of the Dell Tech? It's so hard. It's so hard to imagine that people that we were supposed to be the best of us, wearing suits and each toting different titles, lawyers and businessmen and smart politicians and people that they understand international and the global, and they understand the Bay of Pigs and our problems with the communists and Soviets and this and that. And these men that we're supposed to respect, and these women too, are doing these things in buildings we're paying for. And we're putting our safety of ourselves and our children and our future generations in their hands and their decisions, and trusting them to make laws and to uphold the laws and to be just. They're none of those things. It's disappointing. But if you don't put it out front, shine a light on it and call it what it is, hold it accountable, you're going to keep doing the doggy paddle in the swamp that they choose for you. And nothing's ever going to change. So take the time. I'm going to lose subscribers. I'm going to lose people. I'm not going to get that many. Listen, 500, I'm fine with 500. 500 people want to sit here and listen to my garble and maybe get an interest in picking up Pardon My Grief by Penn Jones and the decades that man and the risk that man took to his death till he died of Alzheimer's. He never stopped. Penn Jones showed up every year. You want to talk about dedication? And this is just one story. Every year on the anniversary, the assassination, and held a vigil in Dealey Plaza. He would not stop. He wouldn't bend. And every year it got bigger and bigger and bigger until it got so big that the Texas School Book Depository in the city of Dallas decided they better do something to counteract it. So they created the 6th floor museum, which is an absolute joke. When you go up there, they don't care about insulting you so much that they have 2 different pictures of what the official picture is of the sniper's nest in that window. You know how many times they rearrange those boxes to make it look right? About as many times as they changed the photos and altered the president's body to make it look right, and insulted you and told you a magic bullet could do what it did, and then show you a film of the actual shooting that doesn't match and tell you you're crazy. It's insane. And I hope, just like when I did Liberty and did other things, you know, your interest gets piqued, and maybe you look into, you know, George Washington or Samuel Adams, and it gave you hope to move on, or re-sparked your thought into looking into the Constitution, or whatever it may have done. And that's why I'm doing it. But man, it's a bumpy ride, you know. It really is. It takes a lot out of you, because you're looking at these people like Lee Bowers and the deaf mute that every time and I'm sorry, I just can't remember his name right now. I'm exhausted, and we're about to finish here. But when you look at this man and you understand his story, he saw it and he had such a hard time describing what he saw, and he was frantic. Remember his story. He saw two men. He saw the blast behind the grassy knoll. He saw it. He was sitting on his car. He was coming back from the dentist, I believe, or going to the dentist. He sees the whole thing, I think from the triple overpass. Don't quote me on that. I think that's where he was. Anyway, he saw the whole thing. He had a great view. He sees the two guys, and then he sees the blast, and the one guy turns around and hands the rifle to the other one, and he starts taking it apart and goes down behind the electrical unit there, and one guy walks this way and that one goes that way. He tells it all. He goes home and he tells his father. His father says, "Shut your mouth, don't tell nobody." He tries to go to the police station. He can't deal with it. He can't live with it. It's his obligation. It's his as a citizen, as a human being. They don't listen to him. Nobody can translate. He's struggling. He's trying to describe what he saw. It's killing him. He goes on just right before Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving dinner. He's telling the story again. His uncle's there. He told him to shut his mouth. Don't tell anybody. How many people shut their mouth? How many witnesses? In the interview I heard with Penn Jones, the interviewer asked him, he said, "How many people do you think have actually witnessed the assassination in that area that did not get to tell their story, who were not called as witnesses?" It's dozens. Dozens. What a crime. Let me see if I've got one last thing for you before we go here. And I love you all. Thank you for being here. And tomorrow, I hope Steve will be here with me. I'll focus a little bit on Crossfire with Jim Mars. He breaks everything down really good. And then come back to the Men Who Killed Kennedy series. This is a perfect rendition of what happened to people then. When like I said, they would, I don't know how else to say it. You know, they would just, I heard where you just have you're just completely brainwashed. You just completely mind screw you. Right? Where you looked, you saw what you saw. By the time they were done with you, you just went, but they say that didn't happen, so I guess it didn't happen. And we've been doing that for 60 years. Watch this. I hope this is the right one.
Mr. Nix, where were you on November 22nd, 1963?
Standing on the corner of Main and Houston.
And did you take any pictures of the presidential limousine as it went through Dealey Plaza?
Yes, I've taken pictures before and after, before the assassination and during the assassination.
And you know, of course, that your pictures were eventually used by the government to determine where the limousine was when some of the shots were fired.
Yes.
And did you deliver a copy of your film to the federal government?
Yes, I delivered a copy of my film to the federal government about December the 1st.
About a little over a week after the assassination.
Yes, my film got lost in the processing plant.
Where where is the original film?
The original film belonged to United Press International. The government has a duplicate copy.
And where is that duplicate copy?
In the archives.
And is that the duplicate copy which was used by the Warren Commission for the purpose of determining, along with other films, the Muchmore film and the Zapruder film, where the presidential limousine was when some of the shots were fired?
I would say so.
Well, you now have a copy of your film, which you were kind enough to show to us this afternoon. Is that copy the same as the original which you gave to the FBI on December 1st?
I would say no. There's some films maybe missing, some frames. Some of the frames were ruined.
Does the film which you have at the present time have the same number of frames as the film which you delivered to the FBI on December 1st?
I would say no, but it's because of losing maybe a frame here and there.
At the time the shots were fired, did you look at the book depository building?
No.
Did you think at that time that the shots came from the book depository building?
No, I thought it came from a fence between the book depository and the railroad track.
Does anyone else who you know or who you've spoken with also believe that the shots came from there?
Most everyone thought it came from the fence behind the book depository.
Did you have occasion to speak with Forrest Sorrells, who was, of course, a friend of yours, and the Secret Service agent in charge of Dallas that day?
Yes, I did.
Did he tell you where he thought the shots came from?
He thought they were coming from the same place,
Which is,
behind the fence.
at the present time, where do you believe the shots came from?
Well, they came from the book depository because there's proof that it did come from there.
I see. This you've read in newspapers and you've read the report.
Yes.
And there you have it, guys. Okay, well, listen, my camera went out. I guess that's the time for us to cut and say goodnight. Sorry we're all over the place. I was trying to catch up from last week. It'll be a little bit more structured, hopefully tomorrow. And I appreciate you sticking with me, but I just think this is so important. I'm trying to get out the information as best I can. You saw the man there. He told you everything. He had pictures. He knows what he saw, but he says, they tell me it comes from over here, so I guess that's what happened. And that's what happened to all of us. Don't let them keep doing it. I love y'all. I'm going to have to hunt and find us a video out of here. I appreciate y'all sticking with me. I'm going to reboot this whole system tomorrow. I'll have more time. I had way too many tabs open today to do it right before the show. So hopefully tomorrow it will be a little smoother, but I ain't making no promises. You know, it is what it is, man. I love y'all. Thanks for being here, and be cool, everybody. Be good humans out there. I love you. Good night.